Hi, I'm Laurie Radke, President and CEO of the Greater Green Bay Chamber. I'm excited to share with you our next episode of Community Conversations. Joining me is Bobbi Webster, Director of Public Relations for Oneida Nation. We'll have the opportunity to learn more about Bobbi and her career path, and she'll also share insight on Oneida Nation, its people, and its culture. Thank you for tuning in. So today I'm sitting with Bobbi Webster. Bobbi, thank you so much for being with us here today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Laurie, for the invite.
Absolutely, and I'm so excited to hear more about you and your role in Oneida Nation. So maybe we could just start out and you could share with us a little bit about your perspective and what makes the Greater Green Bay area and this region of the world such a great place to live, work, and raise a family.
I think it's the way the communities have merged and embraced one another. It's been a long road to finding the appreciation of one another, accepting and embracing diversity, and I think that we have done that pretty successfully. I remember back when Green Bay was an all-American city, and there were individuals from all different areas that came together and celebrated the entire community, our unique position as a tribe, just married in with all the different governments that surrounded us. We were able to work together, to plan together, to travel together, and we continue, I think, to grow together.
It makes us all stronger, right? And just a desirable place to live and work. Absolutely. We have an opportunity now for you and I to talk and share with everybody watching a little bit about the heritage of Oneida, right? And talk to us about really the heritage and the culture and things that we may not know.
Well, I think people sort of overlook the fact that the Oneida Nation is a government. It's a separate, unique, and distinct government. And there's a lot of our culture that defines who we are. And we've intertwine that culture, our history, our pride into the government and how it works. So our core values are a part of how we determine our way of life, how we determine how we govern, how we determine the values that we pass on to our children. One of the most unique things is Oneida is a matriarchal and a matrilineal society. We're a government that values the women. So the clan mothers, the aunties, the moms, the sisters, they all had a role and still have a role in defining our community. They're decision makers. And long before Women's Lib, long before Glorious Dynam, we embraced women in our community, in our leadership, in developing the history of where we moved, how we lived our lives, how we cultivated our fields, our homes. The land was historically and traditionally belonged to the women. So that's something a lot of people don't know, the role of the women.
Well, and speaking of role models, you're an Athena winner and really serve as such an important role model for women in the Greater Green Bay community and beyond. So can you share a little bit about, obviously, the culture that you were raised in and what you just shared with us, how that's enabled you to be such an important role model for women everywhere?
Well, I'm pretty humble to be called a role model. Actually, I think that the values that have been passed on through my family, my mother was the real goddess. My mom was able to pass on to me all her values. And she raised not only, I have 2 sisters and 5 brothers, and she not only raised our immediate family. When somebody needed a home to live in, when somebody needed a place to stay, we had people coming in. So besides the 10 core members in our family, there was always an aunt or an uncle or cousins or close family friends that lived with us. And that was because my mom would think, if it were me, I'd want somebody to take in my children. I'd want somebody to take in my sister, my family. I want them to feel comfortable. I want them to be provided for. So the sharing and the do unto others as you would have them do unto you is one of those core values.
You've actually taken that a step further, though, because you take your own time to mentor and share your experiences with other people. So how do you find time to do that?
Well, I think it's a matter of, I've been very, very fortunate to be employed in a position where I'm not on a 40-hour clock. So I do my job in the community, I do my job in my office, I do my job, wherever it's necessary, because my job is to communicate. to communicate to the individuals, to the world, to everybody about who we are and what we do. So it's not a 24-hour, not a 40-hour week that I put in. It's the opportunity to reach out. And if you have an opportunity to spread the word, to educate, to inform people, you take that wherever that is. So there's no fine line that says this is my job and this is not my job. It's a way of life.
And being the director of public relations, obviously, that's a big role, right? And very outwardly facing. What kind of changes have you seen in your role, let's say in the last 5 years?
Technology.
Okay.
Of course, we have become more of a virtual society. The COVID pushed us all in this same corner where communications became a real challenge. And thank God for Facebook. That enabled a lot more communication in our community than ever before. People began to really rely on that. We had to cut back in a lot of our staff, our newspapers, our supplies, all those things were curtailed through COVID. So we were able to reach out into the community, to be quick, to be effective, and to be accurate in our communication through Facebook. So that was probably one of the greatest accomplishments or challenges that we're able to overcome.
Well, that's wonderful, right? Moving forward and innovative and using technology. When we look in the future for Oneida Nation, what kind of exciting things are on the horizon that you're able to share?
I see the dependency upon our core values, our traditions, our culture becoming more important to another generation. I see our young people wanting to know, how do we go back to farming? What are our traditional agricultural practices? How do we get back to sustaining food sovereignty within the Oneida community? How do we keep our language? How do we keep our ceremonies? What do those ceremonies mean? And how can we make sure that everything that we say and everything that we do today will resonate for the next 7 generations?
Well, that's exciting. Thank you for sharing that. Bobbi, when we talked about being an Athena winner and a role model, can you share a little bit about your career path and really some of the highlights that you've been able to experience as you've grown and developed?
I thought about that, and that's just, that's a loaded question, Laurie. I guess I know we have a short period of time here, but I think I started out being interested in being a teacher. Okay. So I was a remedial reading teacher, and I was teaching the Oneida language when I first began to work. I thought I was going to be a stay-at-home mom like my mother was, but I began to reach out, and I went to school, and I got my first job as a reading teacher. I also then went into the tribal newspaper, the Gully Weesacs. I became the editor of the Gully Weesacs. Oh, nice. And as the Oneida Nation began to expand its economic diversity into gaming as well as building the hotel, the value of becoming more community-minded and interacting and building partnerships became more evident to the tribe. So I became involved in public relations. As I said, gaming expanded, and we established a TV bingo show. So I was sort of the news host and culture host on our weekly TV bingo show, brought the news out to the community. We had a half-hour show. It was split down to news, cultural information, bringing our artists, bringing our craftspeople on to the show and displaying something. And then we go to a bingo game and then go back to another segment and go back to a bingo game and then the big winner. So got very comfortable being sort of a camera personality. And then I was involved in, in PR. You work with your government, you work with your community. Crisis management becomes very high priority at sometimes. But I was able to work with all the tribes in Wisconsin when Oneida began to negotiate our first gaming compact in the 90s. Sure. And in doing that, PR was what was needed. So one of my first big challenges was, as a PR person, going to Washington, D.C. and meeting Senator Daniel Inouye. And we met with Senator Inouye about Indian gaming on a national level. And he said, if the tribes are going to be successful at Indian gaming, you're going to need PR. You need attorneys, you need lobbyists, but this is a war and a battle for PR. So that was like, wow, he's such a wise man. And I was involved very early in the PR on that. and was able to work with all 11 tribes in Wisconsin, as well as Oneida, and that was on the path to meeting with the state of Wisconsin. At that time, it was Governor Thompson, and it was an adventure. I learned an awful lot because you have leadership from all these different tribal communities. You had the governor, there were staff of attorneys and lobbyists, so a lot of intergovernmental interaction at that time. So in I guess my path, things sort of calmed down and became, a little bit more moving progressively in terms of economic development in the tribe. But my department began to grow and had a lot of support within the Oneida Nation. And as long as I've done my job in a manner which I feel was the best that I could do, and something my father said, just be honest. I had my mentor was two mentors, Charlie Leonard and Susan Finko, and both of them, had the value of honesty. And my dad would say, they can accuse you of not knowing something, they can say you're dumb, you can educate yourself, but don't ever lie because you can never recover your integrity.
Great advice, right? So wonderful. Bobbi, I know we only had a short time here today to meet with you and have that conversation, so thank you for your insight. I appreciate your time and your contribution to the community as a whole. And I've learned some great things about Oneida Nation and about your role within that. So thank you again. And thank you to all of you who've tuned in for a community conversation.